All right. Looks like the recorder's going. Let's pause this music. I'm going to be listening to Run the Jewels 3 this morning. It's a really good album, and it'll get you going for sure. So that'll be my plan after I finish this clip. It's 8:57, so I left on time today, which is good. And I had a coffee experience yesterday that was a little bit unpleasant. Just felt too caffeinated. I used to eat breakfast in the morning. I'd have 2 hard-boiled eggs after my cup of coffee. And I've stopped doing that, I guess, as of this week. Ran out of eggs and didn't really want to keep going with that habit. No, for no real reason. So I've been having coffee on an empty stomach. And earlier in the week, when I had run out of eggs, I started drinking a cup of water with my coffee just to kind of break it up a little bit. Because coffee, first thing in the morning on an empty stomach, can be a little rough, especially if it's a strong cup. And so yesterday, when I got into work, I should say it's March 7th right now. So Thursday, today's my Friday. Weekend starts tomorrow, but I'll get to that. Anyway, got to work yesterday, and I was just buzzing. Like, I had a bunch of stuff that I needed to do, not directly related to work, but things that I wanted to do. For some reason, my phone keeps inserting a .no media file in my music, and so it makes it to where I can't play any of my songs for some reason. I'm not really sure what's going on there. One of my apps is writing in my storage, and it takes away all my music. So walking by some people. Don't want to be talking about this in front of people. Anyway, had to troubleshoot that all through the morning. It took about 2 hours for me to come down from the caffeine. Shit, more people. In just a sec. Let me pass all these people real quick. This is more people than I'm used to. Morning. Alright, this story will never be complete. Anyway, it took me about 2 hours yesterday to come down from the coffee and to fix this .no media problem. But anyway, that doesn't really matter. All that just to say, I went ahead and went back to my previous coffee regimen, which was to have 1 scoop regular coffee, 1 scoop decaf. So I'm on that this morning, and I'm feeling a lot more balanced. Don't feel like I'm really revving into 6th gear or anything like that. So that's good. I was looking, the scoops that I use for coffee, my scoop is a 2 tablespoon scoop. So I was previously putting in 4 tablespoons of Starbucks Pike's Place roast, and that's a lot of coffee. And I'm not sure what has necessarily changed in my life, but I seem to be more sensitive to caffeine now than I was earlier in life. So yeah, take that for what it's worth. Feeling better out here, and that's the point. There was another point associated with that. What was it? I don't know. It escapes me now. I'll come back to it. So this weekend is going to be interesting. Saturday, Erica and I are going to be going to her parents' farm and helping her dad, whose birthday was recently, with some sort of flooring project. I don't really know what we're going to be doing, but we're kind of going up there because it was his birthday, and it's probably one of the last things that Eric and I do on a weekend where we spend this much time together before the trip. And that's kind of put things into an interesting perspective as I get closer and closer to actually leaving for the trail, and then also seeing all these people on YouTube who I've been following who have already started it. I just remembered what I was going to say, so I'll interrupt myself quickly just to say that it's slightly warmer today. I think it was 36, so I'm wearing a lot less clothes, and the wind has died down as well, so the rain is coming in. There's always that weird cycle, it gets warm when the rain comes in, and then behind the rain is always a windy front that takes all the heat away and brings in cold. So we're on the flip side of that now. It's been cold and windy for the past few days, and now the rain's coming back. So it's going to be a wet weekend. So I need to replace Erica's knock sensor on her car, because she's occasionally getting a check engine light, and that's something I need to fix before I leave, which brings me back to the perspective of as time kind of whittles down, I bought a tub of kimchi a week ago, and I'm just thinking, like, as I keep going to the grocery store to get more food, it's like, in a couple weeks I won't have to buy food in that same way. I'll have to be kind of conservative with the stuff I'm getting from the grocery store over the next 3 weeks, because I won't be here to eat it, which is just bizarre. And I am sort of starting to get that feeling like I did with the New York trip, where it's like, do I really want to do this? Like, this is a huge commitment, and there's a lot of elements that could go wrong and be difficult and all that stuff, which to me, even though it's a negative reaction, it definitely, I think, indicates that it's the right thing to do. So I'm glad that I'm having that feeling, because in the past, with the New York trip anyway, the New York trip was so fun and so great. I really enjoyed it, and I think the Appalachian Trail is going to be, even better probably. I don't see how it couldn't be. More interaction and everything. So anyway, that's just a thought. And since Erica and I are going up to Franklin County on Saturday, Friday, I need to really, really monopolize my time so that I can do everything that I want to do this weekend, basically within that period of time. So tomorrow morning, Friday morning, I'm going to probably wake up around 5:30, leave the house probably around 6:30, walk to REI, because I have a hole in my sock now. I need some new socks. It's funny, as soon as you get a hole in your sock, the hole grows really quickly. So I need new socks, and these have really stood up quite well. I know I've put over 1,000 miles on these shoes, and so I know I've put even more miles on these socks, and they've done me well. I might be able to get through the whole trail with just like 2 pairs of socks. So I'll be walking to REI early in the morning, and that should be about a 6-hour trip there and back. And then Jake Cook and I are going to meet, and we're going to do a little podcast, and I'm going to go to the grocery store tonight, so I won't have to worry about getting food for that day. So after the podcast, I'll probably do some yard work, and then maybe, I don't know, I think that's pretty much all the things that I think I need to do. I might take Charlie for a walk, take Egg for a walk, but all that just to say, tomorrow's going to be a long day, and I'm going to go to sleep very tired, I'm sure. I can already picture myself at the end of the day, the feeling that I'll have, where like I'm sitting and I'm basically falling asleep anytime I sit down. I'm just ready for bed. But I like days like that. I think a lot of my trail days, I hope, end similarly. I don't think I'll be getting up at 5:30 every morning, but obviously the only thing on the agenda most days will be to go for a really long walk. So I'm down for that. That's sort of the whole thing I'm signing up for. I'm pretty excited. and nervous and scared and apprehensive, all of which I think are natural and normal. I think it would be indicative of a problem if those things weren't there for me, considering this is a huge undertaking and something I'm not super comfortable or familiar with. So that's cool. This morning I was talking to a friend over Strava, and he initiated me to look into like bicycle addiction. I was just curious if there was going to be any kind of article about cycling addiction specifically, and I actually did find an interesting one on Psychology Today that I sort of power read, in which I was just kind of like skimming over the paragraphs, trying to find anything that might be interesting or applicable to my situation. And there were quite a few different articles about it, about being addicted to cycling. And I think these are probably for people who were like race based, or like they wanted to win races, or at least that was the sort of the sense I got from it. But it's basically just a branch of exercise addiction, which I think I still have, but I think in its current form of like being obsessed with walking instead of biking, I just think it's overall more healthy, because I don't know. I mean, running obviously is high impact, and it's pretty hard on everything below your hips in terms of joints and muscles and bones. But if you're just out walking normally, I mean, that's sort of what our bodies are built for. And so I don't know, I think in a certain way, a very certain way, I think a 6-hour bike ride is more taxing on the body as a whole and the mind than a 6-hour walk is. I don't know, it's just like healthier. Something about the position that you have to be on the bike, where you're sort of compressing your organs, because you're hunched over, sort of your back kind of looks like the letter C. Like, that's not a condition that really promotes flow, like blood, oxygen, viscera juices. Whereas if you're walking, you're upright and everything feels good. Everything feels like it's flowing in the direction it's meant to. Morning. So, I don't know, that was something I noticed when I first switched over to walking and running. Just that, like, it just felt like everything was in alignment. And, I don't know, standing up straight and being able to, like, take a deep breath and not feel that my body was, like, restricted at all. Like, I'm stretching a little bit now just thinking about it. It feels good. I was starting to develop a little bit of a numb sensation in like the lower, like right above my right hip, like where I assume there's like a bunch of muscle, and it was just like a numb feeling, which obviously didn't hurt, but it was distracting because it just didn't feel good to be numb right there, and that's since gone away. I don't feel that at all anymore. I do occasionally feel a similar kind of like straining numbness in the upper right part of my shoulder, like my shoulder blade, I guess. But I've been chopping wood, which I feel like has strengthened that area, because I don't really feel it anymore. I felt it primarily when I would be wearing a backpack that was pretty heavy. So I'll actually be able to test that again tonight, see how it holds up since I'm going to the grocery store. Today's content is not quite as thrilling as yesterday's, but then again, that came at a cost. I was jazzed up yesterday, not even necessarily thinking now that stuff was better per se, but I felt like it was better. This just feels like I'm reading a list of like, I don't know, like a laundry list of things going on in my head. But that's sort of the whole point of this. It's not really to create stellar content. It's just to have a picture, a window into each day. And to that end, it is good, because today, this is naturally, authentically how things are going and how I feel about it. So that's good. So anyway, back to just exercise addiction. My sibling, as they would prefer to be called, they had a similar kind of, I think, affliction. When they were in college, they'd run a lot, and that was very restrictive with their diet, and all that just to say, I think we have like sort of a propensity for exercise addiction and for like being very easily able to regulate our diet. But we also binge a lot. I think once we feel like we deserve it, once we've done our work. But we don't eat necessarily bad stuff. We binge on like peanut butter and dates, healthy versions of treats, basically. I like apples and peanut butter a lot. That's a dessert item that I've been having every day. My diet right now is like every night for dinner I have mixed rice with it's pretty flavorful mixed rice. It's like dirty rice. It has beans and like dehydrated tomatoes and stuff. It's very good, very tasty. And on top of that I have kimchi and then fish. And the fish is like a ginger garlic ponzu fish. It's just tilapia, so it's pretty neutral and accepting of those flavors. And after I eat that, then I have Greek yogurt with walnuts and honey, which is really, really tasty. Full fat, of course. Not trying to skimp on the calories or the fat. And then for dessert, I have an apple with peanut butter, and I add peanuts to it so it's more crunchy. And I also add this little mixture of flaxseed and chia seeds and sunflower seeds. So very crunchy, very gritty. The chia seed, flaxseed mixture, both of those being ground, isn't the best, especially because like chia seed and flaxseed both seem to like become slimy when they get wet. They release some sort of, I don't know what it is. It's like a fat layer that comes out of them, and it just surrounds them, and it's slimy. So sometimes that can be a little off-putting, but I have enough peanut butter and apple in there to balance it, I guess. All that just to say, my probiotic intake has definitely gone up dramatically, and my diet right now is pretty healthy for my nighttime meals, and hopefully that helps carry over into the trail, because I'm not super restrictive or I don't know. I do have a very particular diet, but I also know what within the bounds of normal American food is like worth eating and nutritious and stuff. So I'm not too concerned about the Appalachian Trail. I'm not going to be eating all that nasty garbage that it seems like most people eat, living on honey buns and Pop-Tarts and hamburgers and milkshakes and all that bullshit. But I do hope to eat a lot of peanut butter and probably a lot of ramen. Not that that's necessarily the best, but that might be a better option for dinner time meals. I don't know, the whole thing, I don't have a really strict plan for it. I'm just going to kind of let it unfold naturally, the diet side of it. But I do know that I'm going to start with 2 1-pound tubs of peanut butter. I'm going to bring some honey with me. I'll have ramen, I'll have oatmeal, I'll have instant coffee, and that's probably all I'll need. I'm thinking for like lunch/snacks, I'll just have peanut butter and be able to throw peanuts on top of it and just kind of work through. A few tablespoons of peanut butter, you get 500 calories pretty easily. So that'll be that. Anyway, I've somehow managed to gab my way through the unfinished Beltline, all the while feeling like I said absolutely nothing. So I'll go ahead and leave it there for today. 9:16, so I'm slightly ahead of schedule. That's good. And I'll go ahead and throw on Run the Jewels and make my way the rest of the way to Ponce City Market. It's actually a week from today that I leave my job. So pretty hard to believe, pretty hard to fathom what's going to come next, but I do feel ready. I don't really feel like in the same vein of obsessively researching and looking for things online to watch or read about. Like, I don't really care at this point. I don't care about trying to find the best gear. I don't care about trying to find or familiarize myself with where I'll be going and where I might be stopping. It's such a big trip. I mean, I could barely do that for the New York trip when I went up there. I mean, the only reason I had a definite stopping or starting point was because I knew I needed to get from Airbnb to Airbnb. But the Appalachian Trail, it's totally open. There's absolutely no area in particular that I need to get to on any given day. So that is an interesting lack of constraints. And, it's going to be true freedom and autonomy. It's going to be really interesting. It's going to be the most freedom I've ever had as an adult, because everything that I do day by day will just be pretty much precisely what I want to do and when I want to do it. And I actually met someone at MailChimp yesterday who thru hiked back in 2012. And what's the tie-in there? Oh yeah, he said that, basically it seems like things kind of shake out naturally, and you end up finding people to hike with just that seem like you were meant to hike with them. And that makes sense to me because of camping habits, hiking habits in terms of speed and distance. Like, you really will just kind of shake out naturally. And I'm excited to see how that works for me. I'm also excited to see, hopefully, I'm going to try to catch up with a lot of the people who I'm seeing have already started. I know a lot of them are taking it slow at first, which is a smart move, especially if you haven't done a ton of physical training. But I've been training pretty hard, not intensity-wise, but just duration-wise. Like, I can definitely hit the ground running, even in the mountains. Like, the idea of a 16-mile backpacking hike doesn't scare me at all. And so I'm definitely first day, and I guess I should revise what I said earlier. I do have a plan for the first week, which is basically to mirror what Benji and I did last year when we were on the trail, in terms of distance and via points and stuff. It's going to be pretty similar. I'm not sure I'll stop in towns quite as often as we did, because we stayed, I think, at did we stay at 2 or 3? We stayed at Neel's Gap. We stayed in the cabins there, and then we went to Hiawassee. And I guess the rest of the time we camped. Let me think about that. We stayed at Hawk Mountain Shelter first night. Second night, Woods Hole. Third night was Neel's Gap, I believe. Fourth night was Blue Mountain. Fifth night, I think, was Hiawassee in a hotel. Noisy out here. Sixth night, we stayed at a campground. I don't remember the name of that one. It wasn't at a shelter. It was the first night we stayed just at a basic campground. That was probably one of the best nights because we met some cool people. And then that was our last day. We hiked out from that campground and stayed at my parents' cabin that night. And man, I remember even just that night having a little bit of withdrawal. I was like, damn, this is so sad this is ending already. I remember the last day that I was on the trail with Ben, it was the first time that I felt really confident and comfortable with hiking alone. And so that morning when we woke up at the campsite and said goodbye to the people who we had met, who later went on to successfully thru hike, props to Beamer and Nugget, we started the day with a hippie speedball, which was drinking a cup of coffee and smoking some weed. And so, so with all that energy and just I don't know, it was sometimes you drink coffee, sometimes you smoke weed, and sometimes it just feels good. You're just totally empowered by both substances. There's a good synergy. You feel creative, you feel powerful. And so I just went by myself, broke away from Ben, and started hiking alone, which again was my first time doing that. And I was just oh man, this is cool. I could get used to this. as they say. And so I'm going to be re-entering that feeling again, where I just am by myself and feeling confident and comfortable and in control. With humility, of course. I don't think I'm going to be throwing the Appalachian Trail over a barrel or anything like that. I think I'll definitely have, I feel like the Appalachian Trail and I are good, we're worthy opponents, as Captain Hook and Peter Pan once said of each other. My great and worthy opponent. Who is this spineless whatever Captain Hook said to Peter Pan when he first arrived in Hook? Anyway, that's an aside. So yeah, that's my first week on the trail. I'm talking more than I ever thought I would on a day like this, when I already felt like I had burst my bubble. But yeah, after that first week, it'll be pretty close to, I think, the NOC at that point. And I know as soon as I step over Winding Stair Gap and head further north on the trail, crossing the road, I'll have one of those Samwise Gamgee moments where I'll be like, if I take one more step, it'll be the furthest away from home I've ever been. So I'm excited to have that moment where I'm like, oh shit, this is all new territory. I remember when I was biking to New York, first 2 days were kind of boring. Or maybe not the first 2 days, but the first day and a half. I think I went to Asheville the second day. It's 100 miles away from my parents' house, so yeah, that makes sense. And I had already biked, it was 130 miles to my parents' house, and I had made that ride before. That's not something I've done a lot, but it's something I had done. I want to say I know I've done it once. Maybe I've only done it once. Maybe I've done it twice. I've done it no more than 3 times, let's say that. And so that was boring, and it was also stressful, because that's just a shitty way to go north, going to my parents' house. It was like, I don't know, nothing inspiring about that route. It was going through Gainesville and all these podunk Georgia cities. It's just not fun, not inspiring, not beautiful, not unique, not novel. Familiar territory, and not in a good way. So I was kind of uninspired the first day and a half, because once I left my parents' house to head for Asheville, I was also familiar with that terrain a bit, because I've biked around the Raven County area in the past, so I'm pretty familiar with the mountains you have to climb to get up to what's that place called? Morning. How are you? Good. How are you? Pretty familiar with getting to Highland, which is a pretty good climb. It's like I don't remember if it's 4 or 8 miles. It's probably 4, because 8 mile climbing doesn't even make sense for a mountain in Georgia. It's not that tall, but it's a good climb, and that's how I started my day, getting into Highlands. That was arduous. I think that might have been the hardest climbing I did, but maybe that was actually just me acclimating to all the climbing that I ended up doing. But anyway, after I got to Asheville, which I'd never been, that's when things started to get cool, because I was in new territory, and I was excited because I was doing it, and I was doing it myself, doing it my damn self, and that was cool. That was empowering, seeing new landscapes and not being sure what was going to come. That was the fuel that I needed to keep going. Not that I ever even had an inkling of a moment of wanting to stop. Similar to when Ben and I finished our time on the trail last year at Winding Stair Gap. As soon as I arrived in New York, I was kind of bummed, because I was like, damn, that was so easy. There was nothing difficult about that at all. I think it rained for 15 minutes one day out of the 10 that I took to get to New York, and it was September, so it wasn't hot, and I hadn't even had a flat tire. The whole thing was just too blessed to stress. But yeah, I mean, being on the trail, it's going to be a lot harder, and I'm excited for that difficulty, because as deep down as it might go, the highs and the ups will be proportionate and congruous with it. So I'm coming up to an Old Faithful porta potty now. I'm going to use it. So, actually maybe I'll take this in there with me. I've never recorded from inside a porta potty, but I go to them like every day. So I'll take my gloves off, use the porta potty, and then I'll sign off from there. I have a pretty good repertoire of where porta potties are located throughout the city. I have a few that are on standby, and I know this one's here, right over off of Wiley. It's a good thing to be able to find when you're walking in a city, because man, when you have to pee, you get anxious about that. All right. Cool. Didn't really have to pee, but a piece of advice I took a long time ago from somebody was that you should never pass up a porta potty and never trust a fart. So I try to live by that. So on that note, go ahead and leave it here. Switch over to run the Joules and make the rest of my way to work. Talk to you tomorrow.